We all know the story of Anne Frank. For 761 days, 8 people hid in a secret annex in Amsterdam, their lives immortalized in a young girl's diary. But there's one part of that story that's always been a painful, unanswered question. For over 75 years, we've wondered, how did those 761 days come to such a sudden, violent end? Just think about that. This one entry from Anne's diary, it captures the crushing reality of their day-to-day existence. Every single knock on the door, every unfamiliar voice could have been the end. For over 2 years, they were living on a knife's edge, Their entire survival hinged on silence, on luck, and on the incredible bravery of their helpers. The fear of being discovered must have been absolutely constant. And then, on that August morning, their luck just ran out. The German security police raided the annex. All 8 people were arrested. Only one, Otto Frank, would survive the war. But the question has haunted everyone ever since. How did they find them? Was it just a random search, an accident? Or did someone make a phone call? Was it a betrayal? And if it was, who did it? Now, for decades, there have been theories, lots of them, but never any real, definitive answers. That is, until very recently, when a new investigation made headlines all over the world. It promised a breakthrough by treating this historical mystery like a modern cold case police investigation. This group, called the Cold Case Team, or CCT, used all kinds of modern forensic methods, even artificial intelligence. And they made a huge announcement. They said they'd solved the case. They even put a number on it. They were over 85% certain they knew who had betrayed the Frank family. And the name they put forward? Well, it was shocking. Arnold van den Berg. Now, this wasn't some known Nazi sympathizer. He was a respected Jewish notary, a man who was actually a member of the Jewish Council, the very organization the Nazis forced to administer the Jewish community. So, what was this bombshell evidence? What did they have? Well, the CCT's entire case, believe it or not, rested on a single piece of paper, a copy of an anonymous note that Anne's father, Otto Frank, got sometime after the war. The note is incredibly direct. It names van den Berg. It names the Nazi office. It even gives this chilling detail that he had a whole list of hiding addresses. For the cold case team, this was it. This was the smoking gun. Case closed, but was it really that simple? Well, pretty soon after the book came out, the whole thing started to unravel. A team of Dutch historians really dug into the CCT's investigation, and what they found was that the case against van den Berg wasn't just weak, it was, in their words, fundamentally flawed. The historians' report basically called the investigation a shaky house of cards. They found this pattern where the CCT would make an assumption, start treating it as a fact, and then use that fact to build the next part of their argument. They even used a lack of evidence as evidence. For instance, if there was a gap in the records about where van den Berg was, they saw it as suspicious, not just as, well, a gap in the records. Okay, so let's start with that smoking gun note. The CCT said its author must have had inside knowledge. But here's the thing. Historians found the note is actually full of errors. It calls the Nazi security office the JA and says it's on Utrechtstraat. But anyone in wartime Amsterdam knew it was called De Centraalstelle, and it was located on a totally different street. These are mistakes that someone from that time, an actual informant, would be extremely unlikely to make. And what about those terrifying lists of hiding places? The CCT's whole theory depends on the idea that the Jewish Council, and by extension van den Berg, had them. The historian's response to this was pretty blunt. There is just zero evidence that lists like that ever existed. The CCT basically misread some post-war documents to come up with this claim. And honestly, it doesn't even make sense. Why would the council keep records that were basically a death warrant for people in hiding? And finally, the motive. This is the emotional heart of the CCT's story. They paint this tragic picture of van den Berg betraying others to save his own family. It's a powerful story, for sure. But it's just not true. Records show that by the time of the raid, van den Berg's family wasn't in any immediate danger. He had already found other ways to keep them safe. The supposed motive, it just completely evaporates. So if Arnold van den Berg wasn't the cunning collaborator the cold case team made him out to be, then who was it? Well, it turns out the historical record paints a very, very different picture. Far from being a collaborator, it seems van den Berg was actively working against the Nazis.
His notary office was basically a hub for creating fake papers to save Jewish families. People who knew him said he was fiercely anti-German, and he used his network to help people, including connecting them with the resistance to find places to hide. And this timeline, this might be the biggest flaw in the entire theory. Look, Vandenberg's family went into hiding in late 1943. Then an arrest order was issued for him, so he went into hiding in January 1944. That's a full 7 months before the raid on the secret annex. The man they accused of the betrayal was himself a fugitive from the Nazis at the exact same time. So the case against Arnold Vandenberg completely collapses, and we're left right back where we started, with a painful, unanswered question. But maybe the lack of a simple answer holds its own kind of truth. You know, when Otto Frank, the only survivor, helped turn the secret annex into a museum, he made a really important decision. He insisted that the rooms remain empty. He didn't want to try and recreate the life that was lived there. He wanted visitors to confront what was taken away. That emptiness, that's the message. The empty rooms make you think about the void left by 6 million people, and maybe the empty space where a single villain should be does the same thing. It denies us that comfort of just blaming one person. It forces us to ask a much harder question. Is our search for one bad guy just a way to avoid the horrifying truth of the Holocaust? The truth that it wasn't just the act of one person, but of a huge, sprawling system of collaboration and indifference, a system that made neighbors and colleagues and entire governments complicit in murder. Maybe the true betrayal wasn't a single phone call, but an entire society that let it happen.